Welcome to NTD News, I'm Paul Graney. Here are today's top stories. The latest on Syria. The US has negotiated a deal with Turkey for a 5-day ceasefire. This after Vice President Mike Pence met with the Turkish president earlier today. A bomb cyclone pummeling the northeast US today. Hundreds of thousands left without power and down power lines starting fires. Hong Kongers are gathering together to demand transparency over the death of a 15-year-old girl. While authorities are calling it a suicide, her fellow students say otherwise. Our correspondent is on the scene. And businesses struggling to find enough workers as baby boomers retire. A new survey reveals there's not enough people to fill the growing job vacancies. The US has negotiated a 5-day ceasefire in Syria with the president of Turkey. It's expected this will allow the mostly Kurdish YPG to withdraw from the area.
Vice President Mike Pence made the announcement at a news conference following more than 4 hours of one-on-one talks with Turkish President Erdogan at the presidential palace in Ankara.
The Turkish side will pause Operation Peace Spring in order to allow for the withdrawal of YPG forces from the safe zone for 120 hours.
He continued to say that Operation Peace Spring will be halted entirely on completion of the withdrawal.
But this is an incredible outcome. This outcome is something they've been trying to get for 10 years, everybody, and they couldn't get it.
The deal also provided for Turkey not to engage in military operations in the flashpoint Syrian border town of Kobani.
We've gotten everything we could have ever dreamed of, and we're also going to be able to bring our people back home, but we'll be able to have control of ISIS total. We'll be able to do whatever we have to do to get the rest of ISIS wherever they may be.
According to Pence, U.S. forces in the region have already begun to facilitate a safe disengagement of YPG units.
Next year's G7 meeting is set to be held at Trump's Doral Golf Club in Florida. In announcing the location today, President Trump's acting chief of staff said he knew it would be controversial, but said that it was the best location and the best deal for taxpayers.
Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney said they started with a list of 12 locations.
We got that list down to just under 10, and the advance team went out to visit those. And from there, we got down to 4 finalists that our senior team went out to look at.
And then whittled it down to Trump National Doral Golf Club in Miami.
That Doral was by far and away the best physical facility for this meeting.
He said the delegations from all the G7 countries will be able to stay at the club. Other factors they considered were its proximity to airports, helicopter landing pads, medical facilities, and whether it had the right kinds of rooms for meetings and other events. He didn't know the final cost, but says hosting it there would save taxpayers compared to other places they looked at.
There was one of the ones I saw was it was almost half as much here. I don't want to butcher the numbers, but it was millions of dollars cheaper by doing it at Doral than it was at another facility.
That, he says, is because they are getting it at cost, not free, but the golf club won't be making a profit from the event. The emoluments clause of the Constitution says federal employees and politicians, including the president, cannot accept anything of value from foreign governments. Mulvaney argued using Doral won't violate the emoluments clause.
I think the president has pretty much made it very clear since he's got here that he doesn't profit from being here. He has no interest in profit from being here. It's one of the reasons that he's not taken a salary since he's been here, is given that salary to charity.
As to whether he might profit later on from increased brand recognition, Mulvaney shrugged the suggestion off.
Donald Trump's brand is probably strong enough as it is, and he doesn't need any more help on that. This is not like it's the most recognizable name in the English language and probably around the world right now.
The G7 summit is a time for world leaders from 7 countries to discuss global issues. Mulvaney said this year's focus will be on growing markets around the world.
So taking a lot of what we have been doing here domestically with such success and trying to encourage the rest of the world to get on board.
The summit will be held June 10th through the 12th. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
And Mulvaney also responded to questions about the U.S. withholding aid to Ukraine this summer. As NTD Holly Kellum reports, he says the reasons for withholding it were all above board.
President Trump is not a big fan of foreign aid. Never has been, still isn't. Doesn't like spending money overseas, especially when it's poorly spent.
Mulvaney today saying the White House was looking at corruption in the country, other countries' contributions to Ukraine, and whether Ukraine was complying with the Justice Department investigation.
The look back to what happened in 2016 certainly was part of the thing that he was worried about in corruption with that nation. And that is absolutely appropriate.
In July, the White House withheld $400 million in aid to the country. It happened shortly before a phone call in which President Trump asked Ukraine's president to help with an investigation into interference in the 2016 election. He specifically asked about a private company called CrowdStrike that was hired by the Democratic National Committee to analyze the hacked DNC server. CrowdStrike gave the FBI the results of its investigation but didn't turn over the server. In the conversation, Trump said Ukraine had the server and asked it to cooperate with the investigation. Also on the call, Trump asked for Ukraine to look into whether there was any corruption involving former Vice President Joe Biden and his son.
The money held up had absolutely nothing to do with Biden. There's no question.
Whether Trump threatened to withhold aid to Ukraine in exchange for an investigation into Biden is at the center of House Democrats' impeachment investigation. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
Hundreds of pro-Trump demonstrators gathered in front of the U.S. Capitol today to show support for President Trump and demand that Congress stop the impeachment inquiry.
Welcome to Washington, D.C., the home of the free and the brave, and the current residence of our President of the United States, Donald Trump. All of you, what we hear right now, they're going to hear all across the nation next November, and it's going to be 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years.
Congressman Steve Scalise and John Rutherford joined the grassroots effort led by Trump's supporters. Scalise said the people should have the right to choose their president, not Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff behind closed doors. The House, Senate, and White House are offering condolences to the family of Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings, who died today at 68 years old. President Trump ordered flags to be flown at half-staff today and tomorrow on all public grounds and buildings.
President Trump wrote in a statement that he got to see firsthand the strength, passion, and wisdom of the highly respected leader, adding that Cummings would be difficult to replace. Cummings was the chair of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, one of several Democrats alleging wrongdoing on the part of the president. Likewise, President Trump zeroed in on Cummings this past summer for his alleged neglect of Baltimore. During a press briefing, White House Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney mentioned serving in Congress alongside Cummings.
And, he would be missed. He was a classy guy, and I enjoyed much working with him. And the condolences from my family and all of the White House group to his family today. He will be sorely missed.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also delivered remarks on the Senate floor.
Over more than 2 decades in the House of Representatives, Cummings became a living legend in his native Baltimore. By all accounts, he was a powerful and passionate voice on the national stage and a strong advocate for his neighbors.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi was among others expressing condolences, calling him the House's North Star in a statement. Cummings' office released a statement saying that more information would be released later Thursday.
Human rights activists are furious after Venezuela won a seat on the United Nations Human Rights Council. Venezuela secured enough votes inside the UN General Assembly chamber today. Earlier this week, Human Rights Watch urged UN member states not to admit Venezuela into the committee. It said its abusive government clearly falls short of minimum standards for membership. The U.S. State Department said the council has become an exercise in shameless hypocrisy. It predicted that Venezuela would use the council to block any limit to its repressive control of Venezuelans. The U.S. left the council last year, saying it was making a mockery of human rights. Venezuela's victory, however, was greeted by applause inside the chamber from UN countries. A powerful nor'easter storm is pummeling the New England area with heavy rain and strong winds, knocking out power and causing more than 500,000 people in the area to be without electricity earlier today.
About 225,000 customers in Massachusetts were without power, mostly because trees or tree limbs had crashed down, snapping power lines. New Hampshire power outages rose to over 55,000. Nearly 200,000 customers in Maine were without power, but no injuries had been reported. Storm damage was widespread in Connecticut, especially shoreline towns in the southeast corner of the state. The National Weather Service issued high wind warnings to people living in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. Gusts were expected to reach 60 miles per hour. Social media on Thursday was flooded with photographs of downed trees and tangled utility poles. One of the most spectacular images was captured by a man in Biddeford, Maine, who recorded the explosion of a transformer outside his home.
And in New York, for years, people have been discussing closing down one of the largest jails in the country. And today, the fate of Rikers Island was sealed. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from Manhattan.
The island jail has been plagued by claims of rampant abuse, violence, and corruption. Mayor Bill de Blasio proposed shutting down the complex in 2017, and now, 2 years later, the jail will not only be shut down, 4 smaller modern jails will be built in 4 of the city's boroughs. But some council members are worried that this $8 billion plan is unnecessary.
These are not good places to build skyscraper jails. In fact, no place is good for skyscraper jails. The only place to rebuild any jail is on Rikers Island.
As to why Rikers isn't being improved, Holden said it's considered a stain on the city. Meanwhile, the city's plan says the jails are outdated and that the closer inmates are to their families, the better. The president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance of Greater New York thinks otherwise. She said that demolition of the old jail will hurt those in the neighborhood.
The dust is one thing, the debris, the toxins, we went through that for 9/11. We should not be doing that again.
Council Minority Leader Stephen Mateo said in a statement that the plan is costly but also dangerous as it means to reduce the jail population, potentially releasing dangerous inmates onto the street. Rikers holds a maximum of 15,000 inmates. By 2026, the city plans to reduce its 7,000 inmate population to 3,300. So there ends the debate on Rikers Island. 4 jails will now be erected in Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, except Staten Island. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
In Hong Kong, citizens gathered at the school of a 15-year-old girl found dead in the sea, demanding transparency and CCTV footage from the school where the girl was last seen. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more from the students at the school.
Christy Chan was last seen in late September on her school campus. After she went missing for 3 days, her naked body was found at sea. Police dismissed critics' claims that Chan died at the hands of the police force, saying there was nothing suspicious about the teen's death, calling it a suicide.
We don't want to believe that this kind of thing is happening in Hong Kong, but in fact it did. So, I don't feel this place is safe anymore. This place is completely controlled by the Communist Party.
Since the pro-democracy protests began, the number of suicide cases reported has exceeded 100, an unprecedented record in the city. In addition, many of the victims are young protesters with questionable details surrounding their deaths. People mourned Chan's passing and paid their respects, offering flowers and incense.
And there's a lot of dead body found out on the seas last 2 months. Chen Yinam was one of them. So I don't believe that Hong Kong people will commit suicide a lot in this moment.
Chan frequently participated in demonstrations. One reason schoolmates are unsatisfied with the police version of the incident, demanding to see the surveillance camera footage.
If they didn't do anything wrong, why don't they just release the CCTV videos as well as tell the truth to the public?
There are some things that they would like to hide, and the truth is not being released.
After the school released just 2 short clips, students noticed discrepancies in the time codes and a cutoff after the girl entered an elevator, angering students who demand to see what happened afterwards, claiming the footage is edited.
Hope our school can release more CCTV for us to know more about the truths.
Students, outraged, demanded the full, unedited footage. When authorities refused, they vandalized the school.
The public has been questioning about the truth of the CCTV footage, that there may be something that is hidden. I think that all of the citizens has their responsibility to uphold the rights of freedom of speech, even human rights. I would like to see Hong Kong's bright future.
Students have been on strike since Monday and demand the footage be released as citywide protests continue.
Only the 5 demands could end this protest.
After 4 months of protests, people are looking for answers to the problems here, including police brutality and bodies showing up, which police are calling suicides. Citizens will keep seeking the truth until their suspicions are put to rest. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News, Hong Kong.
Up next, the UK and the EU have agreed to a Brexit deal. This after days of rising suspense as both sides work to secure an agreement before deadline. But the deal still faces obstacles to getting approved. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Following days of suspense while Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his team work to finalise a Brexit proposal, the EU and UK have finally agreed to one. However, it's not over yet.
European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said in a tweet that the deal was fair and balanced and encouraged all 27 member states of the EU to approve it. EU leaders are meeting Thursday for a European Council summit, and Brexit is at the top of their agenda. Besides approval from the EU, it also needs approval in the British Parliament. Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party threw cold water on the process just hours before the summit began by announcing its members will not support the deal as it currently stands. The party's support is needed to pass it through the British Parliament. The leader of the Labour Party also said he won't vote for it. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said it was far from a done deal, but that it could still happen by the deadline. Overall, we can say that a deal on the exit of the United Kingdom from the EU is still possible. We will negotiate up until the last second. Johnson will put the deal before members of Parliament on Saturday. He needs a majority of 320 votes to get parliamentary consent. With his own party losing its majority earlier this year, and without the support of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, it looks unlikely Johnson will have the votes.
In what could be one of Germany's last trials for Nazi war crimes, a 93-year-old former concentration camp guard arrived in court today.
Wearing a broad-brimmed hat, the defendant tried to shield his face behind a red folder as an official wheeled him into the Hamburg courtroom for the start of his trial. Bruno D., whose surname cannot be given for legal reasons, is accused of being an accessory to over 5,000 murders in the final months of World War II. Since he was 17 and 18 at the time of the alleged offenses, the now 93-year-old will be tried in a youth court. The task in this trial will be to find out if the accused had an alternative. The prosecutor's office knows of no case where a guard was killed because he refused duty. Tens of thousands of people, mostly Jews, died at the camp during the 6 years of its existence. Many were murdered in its gas chamber, while others succumbed to hunger, sickness, and exhaustion. A descendant of a survivor told reporters he came from New York to represent his family.
My great-grandmother was murdered in the gas chamber at Stutthof, and these trials mean a lot to my grandmother and to our whole family as a pursuit of justice.
Prosecutors argue that as a guard, the defendant was an accessory to murder through the act of stopping inmates escaping from the camp, which was one of the last to be liberated in 1945.
Up next, businesses are struggling to find workers as baby boomers retire. Find out how many states are affected. That and more after the break.
The lasting beauty of traditional oil painting. Realistic style. Brilliant. Moving. Expressive. 2019 NTD Television International Competition for Figure Painting in Oil. Guided by truthfulness, kindness, and beauty. We invite you to join us on our journey back to traditional art. Gold Prize Award of $10,000. For more detail, please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Across the U.S., businesses are struggling to find workers. A new report shows a growing labor shortage due to baby boomers retiring and not enough young workers to replace them.
Now hiring. According to June data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 39 states there are more jobs than there are people looking for work. And economists say the shortage is due in large part to the baby boomer generation retiring by the millions.
And because of that, the working age population in America is growing much more slowly, only about 0.2% per year this decade.
The labor shortage is being felt in all sectors, but especially in education. According to September federal labor statistics, there's currently a 307,000 job shortfall in public education that can't keep up with growing student enrollment. And recent teacher strikes in several states reveal the reason many applicants are staying away: low pay and lack of resources. Meanwhile, David Kelly, chief global strategist with JP Morgan Chase, argues that increasing legal immigration could help replace America's aging workforce.
So what you need to do, in fact, over the next decade is increase immigration, maybe from 1 million a year to 2 million a year. If you did that, you could actually grow the working age population.
He also suggests making 3-year college degrees more available and even delaying eligibility for Medicare benefits to retirees by 1 year until the age of 66.
A mysterious yellow blob is the newest occupant of Paris Zoo.
The yellow lichen-like unicellular being looks like a fungus but acts like an animal.
The blob is a living being that is part of some of nature's mysteries. We don't really know what it is. Even today, we don't know yet if it's an animal or fungus.
The blob, or Physarum polycephalum, is part of the Myxomycetes family, a class of slime mold. It is neither an animal nor a fungus, but has characteristics of both.
It behaves like an animal. It's capable of learning. If we put it in a maze, it will learn and take the best route out of the maze to find its food.
Though it has no mouth, no stomach, and no eyes, the blob can still detect and digest its food. And despite not having a brain, it is capable of finding solutions to problems and transmitting the knowledge it learns.
Donc il nous étonne parce qu'il n'y a pas de cerveau.
So it surprises us because it obviously doesn't have a brain, but it has a way of learning, a form of transmission in terms of knowledge when it fuses, and so it has very surprising behaviors for something that looks like a fungus.
Studies on the yellow slime mold show it can heal itself in 2 minutes if cut in half and can move up to 1.5 inches an hour without any limbs. It will go on display to the public at the Paris Zoo on Saturday.
Up next, see the colors and textures at this year's Mercedes-Benz fashion show in Moscow. Our correspondent is on site. What inspired the collection? Find out when we return.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week is on in Moscow, and our Russian correspondent takes us there to see the colors, textures, and inspiration behind the designs.
The collection is inspired by Alexander Pushkin's fairy tale about the Swan Princess. A modern view on the traditional Russian style is the main feature of this brand.
The collection is inspired by the tale of Tsar Sultan by Alexander Pushkin, and specifically the image of Swan Princess. It's about classical interpretations of the swan in the form of embroidery, applique, shape, and also the Russian shawl.
Evening dresses with a train and voluminous sleeves, long fringes, a style inspired by the wings of a bird. The Russian scarf can be fastened to everyday dresses, which makes the gown cozy and conjures an image of old-school Russian beauty. Accessories on the head are styled on the kokoshnik, an antique Russian headdress. Primary colors are white, blue, terracotta, saturated green, echoing a sense of a swan on a lake in spring. The main fabrics are silk, chiffon, organza, and wool.
I love Elena for using bright colors. I myself love bright colors. It's so sad in the fall and winter when people dress up in gray and black and go on like that until summer, and only then appear in bright colors like flowers blooming. Elena uses bright, juicy, and eye-pleasing colors all year round. All are different, but they are all determined not to turn their work into artistic statements, but to highlight the beauty of women.
114 designers are presenting their collections at the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week on until October 19th. Reporting by Oksana Khan, Moscow, Russia.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney.